All right. Hello, everyone. Just me here today. Today, we're going to talk about clothing and fabrics, the different health consequences of different materials and chemicals. This is a subject a lot of people are interested in. A lot of people ask me about. It's not my expertise at all, but I have been trying to account for this stuff in my own life. So I'll walk you through what I know, and I've got some resources here to share with you. And most of my source information here is from a book called Killer Clothes by Anna Maria Clement and Brian R. Clement. But that book didn't actually cover the main meme that's been floating around, which is the electrical properties of clothing. And since I know a lot of people are interested in that primarily, I want to start with that. As far as I can tell, the source of this information comes from the Torah, the Old Testament. So I've got this article here from HebrewsToday.com from 2013, and the starting point of their investigation came from the Torah, but they ran some experiments on these electrical properties of linen and wool specifically, and other materials, and this seems to be what's floating around now. Lots of posts are talking about this. And I'm not going to read the whole article to you, but I'll pick out what I think is important. So first of all, linen is the focus here, which is made from flax. And flax has been cultivated all through history, before written history, used for textiles, cloths, ship sails, rope, and the Torah certainly emphasized this material over all other fabrics for the sacred attire. And they say here in Genesis 3:21 that the attire of Adam and Shava, which I'm supposing is Eve, I'm not a biblical scholar here at all, but the original Hebrew language of the Old Testament gives the attire of Adam and Shava as a linen robe of light, instead of the current translation in Genesis. And that current translation is unto Adam and also to his wife did Hashem, G/D, make coats of lamb and clothe them. But the rabbis and sages have debated the actual meaning of the phrase coats of lamb. And they say here that it should be read as unto Adam and also to his wife did Hashem, G/D, make linen garments of light and clothe them. And there's a lot of biblical references in this article. One here, in establishing the protocols or statutes of health, the prophet Moses received specific instructions. Cleansing a leper, meaning those incurable, gave only 3 distinct fabrics of attire: wool or linen or leather. That's from Leviticus 13:47-48. And it was emphasized as forbidden to wear linen and wool together, from Leviticus 19:19 and Deuteronomy 22:11. And we'll discuss some of these specific points later, just laying it out for you now. They say the reason for these instructions is that flax possesses truly exceptional hygienic properties that heighten its value in consumer products and explains its widespread popularity. And this brings us to modern times, where people are looking at the frequency measurements, which are done in the unit of angstroms. Angstroms are a weird measurement to me. I first heard it come up when I was speaking with Fred Van Loo, who I did a podcast episode with years ago about structured water. I don't actually think that episode is up here on the podcast because after we got taken down, I didn't put every episode back up, but I will put a link in the description because I know it's at least on video on YouTube for now. But angstrom is a measurement of light, the length of light. And here they used a digital instrument called an AG Environ machine, or AG Environ machine. It was designed by a retired professor to analyze the signature frequencies of agricultural commodities to help farmers determine the right time to harvest or plant. And they say here, at the electronic cellular level, flax cells are highly complementary with human cells, producing a benevolent effect on the human organism. The human cell is capable of completely dissolving a flax cell. It is interesting that flax thread appears to be the only natural material utilized for internal sutures in a surgical setting. So stitches. Scientists have discovered that linen fibers reflect light. The light energy aspect of living organisms has been measured by many individuals within the scientific community. Nobel Prize-winning Dr. Otto Warburg identified signature frequency numbers of the average human at 70 to 90. All results with numbers less than 50 were identified as the signature frequency of chronic disease. Any number less than 15 was identified with those having a diagnosed incurable condition such as cancer. So the human body, average, is 70 to 90, less than 50 is disease, and less than 15 is a so-called incurable condition. Now, I would presume that if we could bring that electrical energy up, that it might no longer be an incurable condition. But that's just my speculation. The measurement of linen fabric measures 5,000 signature frequency. Plant fibers like cotton and hemp are not a healing fiber when measuring its signature energy output. Standard bleached and colored cotton measures 40 of energy. The good news is that organic unbleached cotton measures 100 angstroms, which is a normal but not a healing fiber. So a lot of people are opting for organic 100% cotton because that 100 angstroms basically matches ours. I know they said the average human is 70 to 90, but the average human is not thriving, even in Warburg's time. So other people are saying that the normal human frequency should be 100. So organic cotton, unbleached, matches that, which means it neither suppresses our energy nor increases it. Silk measures 10, which would fail to support health in the human body. I know that surprises a lot of people. People think that silk is a super fine fabric. It's very luxurious. It feels nice. They say here, could it be a low number because of its origin? Silk is produced from an unclean insect. And the Torah outlays a lot of unclean animals that we're not supposed to eat or use for manufacturing consumer products. Could silk be also unclean because the industry is reportedly using spider webs to increase the strength of the fabric? Good question. Rayon is based out of wood products. However, its refining process requires the use of so many chemicals that it is an unhealthy fabric. Rayon measures at 15 signature frequency. Polyester, acrylic, spandex, lycra, viscose, and nylon measure 0 and do not reflect light. Pure wool also measures 5,000 angstroms. And by the way, I'm also curious about alpaca wool, sometimes called fleece, but there's a lot of fake fleece out there. And why? Because we have a lot of alpaca farms up near where I live, where I can actually go to them and visit them, and I know what dyes they're using and so on. Because I'm thinking for winter here, if I myself am going to invest in wardrobes made of these 5,000 angstrom materials, linen and wool, I definitely want wool for the winter. Linen is very breathable and light, and I'm not sure how that's going to help me when it's minus 40 degrees outside. So pure wool measures 5,000 angstroms. For any individual desiring to be well, the best recommendation from the instructions of Torah is to wear linen. Even though wool measures 5,000. They're still all about linen here. Also, Torah gives a warning of wearing wool and linen together, proved in the scientific studies to be accurate. The energy of these two fabrics put together, like a wool sweater on top of a linen outfit, collapsed the electrical field, as well as the wearing of black-colored fabric. Where the two textiles measure 5,000 signature frequencies, when put together, these canceled each other out and brought measurable weakness to the human body. And this right here is actually the reason that I've chosen, since I was first exposed to this information a year or two ago, I chose to go 100% cotton instead of doing linen and wool. Because if you start putting different materials on top of each other, they're saying that changes the electrical properties. So it didn't make much sense to me to buy linen underwear and then wear cotton pants, right? Unless you're going to go 100% linen and everything, which I don't even know how I would do right now. That sounds very expensive to me. And I don't know where you can buy linen socks and stuff like this. I'm just not ready for that type of a transition. So I decided to go 100% cotton for everything, even though it's only 100. And by the way, I didn't buy all organic cotton. I try, but right now my compromise is at least just getting 100% cotton. I don't buy a lot of clothes anyways. And when I'm financially ready, I think I will do the whole linen thing. But I really want to make sure that I can find a company that's not using chemicals, not using toxic dyes, and so on. Because no clothing company is accounting for this. They don't care. And by the way, anybody listening who's in the clothing business, I'm definitely willing to partner with clothing companies and at least just know about these companies and become a customer myself. If they're serious that they do not use any dyes and all this stuff, I'd be happy to be a customer. Right now, I don't know where to get a 100% linen outfit unless we're talking like a toga, which I'm down. I'm down to wear a shawl, right? Might get some weird looks in the grocery store, but for now, I'm not ready for this. And side note here, we were in California recently and there was a store selling all natural fibers. Some of it was 100% cotton. They claimed it's 100% organic. They were not using any dyes or anything. Some of it was wool and all this stuff. And the colors were actually very nice. Like, I don't think you need to dye clothing anyways. Organic cotton comes in some very interesting light shades. They're pleasing to me. Same with wool, alpaca, and linen. It really doesn't need a dye. My problem was I'm not into $80 t-shirts. And I don't understand how a company whose entire pitch is that we do less to make this clothing, how is it that it costs so much more? This is where I'm kind of baffled. You're not using chemicals. You're not using dyes. So there's less materials involved. Why does it cost so much more? And by the way, something this article also touched on, but didn't really dive into, they said that cotton is a very water intensive crop. And this is true. I've read this elsewhere over many years. And in fact, organic cotton is a much, much higher use of water. The most water intensive crops are rice, cotton, sugarcane, soybean, and wheat. So one of the benefits they're talking about with linen is if you care about the environment, flax requires a lot less water than cotton. And organic cotton is even more. Pretty well-known thing. Back to linen, flax fabric is an excellent filter protecting against chemical exposure, noise, and dust. Linen clothing reduces solar gamma radiation by almost half and thereby protecting humans wearing linen. Flax fiber retrieved from contaminated soil appears to be totally resistant to harmful radiation. Linen underwear heightens positive emotions as well as possessing rare bacteriological properties. Not everything in this article is substantiated, by the way. Like, I don't know how they determined that linen underwear heightens positive emotions. But resistant to fungus and bacteria, flax is found to be an effective barrier to some diseases. According to Japanese researchers, again, I wish a lot of this stuff was cited. It's not. I'm not going to dig for it at this moment. According to Japanese researchers, studies have shown that bedridden patients do not develop bed sores where linen bed sheets are used. And linen bed sheets were always traditionally used in a hospital setting. Cannot tell you if your modern hospital down the street is going to be using linen, but traditionally that was always the case. Wearing linen clothes helps to decrease some skin diseases, from common rash to chronic eczemas. Linen is highly hydroscopic, meaning it rapidly absorbs and gives up moisture. Absorbing water as quickly as a pond surface, before giving a feeling of being wet, linen cloth can absorb as much as 20% of its dry weight. This explains why linen cloth always feels fresh and cool. Personal note here, I'm pretty sure the only linen garment I ever owned, or two of them, I had a shirt and I had a sport jacket. And the problem I noticed before I knew any of this stuff was just that it wrinkled up super quickly. So I'm not sure if that is because of the other additives in those specific garments, but it was very annoying. The only time I've ever dry cleaned anything in my life was that sport jacket because it was so wrinkly. And I'd put it on and I'd go to an event later that day and it was already wrinkly by the time I got to that event. So I'm not sure what's up with that. I guess it wouldn't matter for a toga, but it definitely mattered for a sports jacket. Linen does not cause allergic reactions and is helpful in treating a number of allergic disorders. Linen is effective in dealing with inflammatory conditions, reducing fever, and providing a healthy air exchange. Some neurological ailments benefit from the use of linen clothing. Some of these claims are pretty huge here, I understand, but I'm just sharing this with you. And I don't disbelieve it, by the way. If it is true that these materials have a higher electrical potential, higher electrical frequency, then it should actually improve our human condition. I know from working with energy devices, especially the frequency tuning discs that I've been selling for many years, They operate on the same principle. They have energy put into it, and when we put them on the human body, we instantly see an improvement in strength and balance, which is the primary way we actually sell these products with a demonstration, showing people how weak they are off the street, especially if they have a cell phone in their pocket, and then adding a disc to them or even under their shoe, and then showing them how much stronger and better balanced they are immediately. And I've been in the supplement business many, many years, and I like to say this when I can. I've seen much faster and more miraculous improvement with energy devices, especially frequency tuning discs, because nutrition takes time. You can see miracles when it comes to nutrition. I was healed with nutrition. I was in lifelong pain until I got the right mineral product in me, and my pain and symptoms disappeared. But I've seen incredible things with frequency discs, especially because they're much easier to sell. The average person walking by us in the mall where we were located, I helped to open a store that sold the discs, and I was there to sell nutrition as well and train the owner on selling nutrition. But we sold a lot more discs than we did nutrition because nutrition is a lifestyle. Truly, for it to take full effect, you want to eliminate processed foods. You want to take more than one supplement, and it's a rather large investment for people. It's a huge change for people, and a lot of people aren't ready for that type of a change. So it's much easier to show them what a disc can do to them immediately without any other changes in their life. And I promise you, we have seen people stand out of wheelchairs. We have seen people return to work because they had chronic problems, lupus and obesity, all kinds of things. We've seen people walk in with crutches and walk out without the crutches. And I know some of this stuff makes us sound crazy, makes us sound like we're selling snake oil, but the frequency tuning discs are not the only products that can do that. They're just the cheapest ones that actually work. We sell discs for $40, by the way. It's the cheapest energy product that actually works in our experience. There are cheaper products, but they don't work. And there are many new ones on the market, and I have not kept up with all the new products on the market, but all of them cost way more than $40. And by the way, you can buy those discs from me. I do sell them on my website. The link is in the description. We sell them just by themselves, $40 for a disc. We sell them on steel bracelets, silver bracelets, cloth bracelets, and I actually sell the cloth ones for the same price as a regular disc. It only costs me a couple of dollars for these little cloth bracelets. Takes a couple of minutes to wire a disc into them. So I sell them for the same price. It's a really good deal, honestly. Got some new colors in recently. And I know these work regardless of what clothing you're wearing. So I'm just saying that this article saying that clothing materials have high electrical properties, that's fantastic. We should know this. But I also know that you can apply a device to a human being, no matter what they're wearing, that has energy in it, and it will do essentially the same thing. I don't know if it brings them up to 5,000 angstroms. I've never measured an angstrom before, but I know that it has a dramatic impact very, very quickly on the vast majority of people who use it. Which is another reason it's so easy to sell, because we get a lot of people bringing their friends and family in for bracelets because theirs helped them so dramatically, so quickly without lifestyle changes. You still should do lifestyle changes, but just saying. So back to the article here. Linen cloth does not accumulate static electricity. Even a small addition of flax fibers, up to 10%, to a cloth is enough to eliminate the static electricity effect. Linen possesses high air permeability and heat conductivity properties. Heat conductivity of linen is 5 times as high as that of wool and 19 times as that of silk. So maybe I don't need wool for my winter attire. I don't know if they make linen winter jackets. I will have to find out. In hot weather, those dressed in linen clothes are found to show the skin temperature 3 to 4 degrees Celsius below that of their silk or cotton-wearing friends. According to some studies, again, I wish these studies were cited, a person wearing linen clothes perspires 1.5 times less. So they sweat 1.5 times less than when dressed in cotton clothes, and twice less than when dressed in viscose clothes. Not sure what that means. Meanwhile, in cold weather, linen is an ideal warmth keeper. Silica present in the flax fiber protects linen against rotting. And silica, of course, is one of the most abundant minerals in soil. The preserved mummies of Egyptian pharaohs were wrapped in the finest linen cloth. Linen rejects dirt and does not get a furry texture. Linen and linen-containing articles are easily laundered in hot water, may be boiled and dried in the sun. Besides, they may be hot ironed, thereby ensuring maximum sterilization. Linen provides a sensation of gentle, natural relief. Linen's smooth surface and matte luster appears beautiful and feels pleasant to the touch. The more linen is washed, the softer and smoother it becomes. And there are over 200 varieties of flax plants. Researchers found that one will fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, and wake up in a better mood after sleeping in linen. Will it have that same effect if you put linen sheets on top of a polyester bed? I don't know. I wish this was studied in more detail because I am hesitant to go out and buy a bunch of things like linen pillowcases, for example, and then put them on a pillowcase that's not made of linen and it collapses the energy field. I would just like to know a bit more about this before I really invest in this. No fabric outpaces linen in natural strength, luster, and durability. And there's a testimony here shared by a Karate Jew. Not sure if I said that correctly. Karaite. He testified that his linen tallit, or prayer shawl, was precious to him. In questioning him as to why he still had it, he opened up to share a remarkable testimony. 13 years previously, his wife was in labor and delivered an infant that failed to breathe. Calling 911, they waited and gripped with the inevitable loss of an infant in stillbirth. Grief-stricken, he grabbed his prayer shawl and held his daughter in his arms for an agonizing 30 minutes. He recited the prayers of faith while waiting for the team to arrive. Unbelievably, according to his account, when the paramedics arrived and had not yet touched the infant, there was a dramatic color change for the infant and breathing had resumed. He testified that this special child has a brilliant mind and does well in school. So that's pretty interesting. I do also think that his prayer would have had a big effect there as well. We'll do another episode in the future about prayer and placebo, faith. It is very important in healing, especially in catastrophic cases. Next in this article, if you wear black clothing, standard cotton clothing, rayon, polyester, and nylon stockings, these will hinder your health by discharging and extinguishing one's electrical field. So no black clothing, people. If you have good flax next to wool or other man-made fake fibers, the energy signature will discharge and one will suffer the consequences. What is at a higher level will come down to the average of the lower amount unless shielded. If you use cotton or rayon, these are not as strengthening to your body and may serve to keep your health average with the typical Western illnesses. If you want optimum health and healing and a strengthened immune system, you can choose to follow the instructions of Torah and get in your sacred wardrobe, knowing that you have the highest blessings available. Now, I don't think we have to be religious to take this information in and apply it. If it is true that it can be measured in angstroms, well, that's something we can use to optimize our own life, regardless of your beliefs. And they're talking about here how somehow this changed in general practice, even within Judaism. So now rabbis and stuff are wearing wool and linen together. They are breaking the rules. And they're also talking about how many individuals within the faith and without it have broken the Torah rules by using the unclean sources of dyeing, coloring their clothing. And here from Leviticus 5, 2, 3, and 5. Or if a soul touch any unclean thing, whether it be a carcass of an unclean beast or a carcass of an unclean cattle, or the carcass of unclean creeping things, and if it be hidden from him, he also shall be unclean and guilty. Or if he touch the uncleanness of man, whatsoever uncleanness it be, that a man shall be defiled with it, and it be hid from him. When he knows, then he shall be guilty. So I guess if you don't know this stuff, you're not guilty. But now you know, whoops, I just made you know, so now you're guilty. And it shall be, when he shall be guilty in one of these things, that he shall confess that he has sinned in that thing. And the instructions as to defilement, as to the use of any creeping thing, is explicit in the Torah. From Leviticus 11, 43 to 45, you shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing that creeps, neither shall you make yourselves unclean with them, that you should be defiled thereby. You shall thereby sanctify yourselves, and you shall be holy. Neither shall you defile yourselves with any manner of creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Really did not like bugs here. And there were directions about coloring from Exodus 28:33. And beneath the hem of it you shall make pomegranates of blue, and purple and scarlet, round about the hem thereof, and the bells of gold between them round about. The ancient dye colors of dark blue, purple, and red all come from parts of the pomegranate plant. So not a creeping thing, comes from a plant. The dark blue comes from the use of the root using a salt, the red from the rind of the pomegranate, and the purple from the flower and fruit. And here they talk about some of the unclean dyeing methods. First one is indigo blue, which has been in use for over 5,000 years. They've used different extraction methods, but the resulting dye cake was the same. Indigo was prized for its fastness and its resistance to sunlight, but indigo is made by a labor-intensive fermentation process, and they're against the fermentation process here. And they must be tempered by alkaline additions such as urine and camel dung. By the way, if you don't think that urine and dung is still used in at least some textile production, you're definitely mistaken. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about Gucci or Nike or a pair of socks from the dollar store. It is definitely possible that some of these types of materials are being used today. Next is Tyrian purple, probably the most famous dye from antiquity. It's been called many names, such as royal purple, but Tyrian purple is the most common. It's presumed that the Tyrians invented the dye, although its manufacture far preceded written history. The raw source for this dye is a tiny sac or gland in a shellfish called murex. And of course, the Torah says no shellfish. The mollusk is common to the coast of the Mediterranean, from Morocco all the way to the coast of North Africa to the Near East. There are many Phoenician sites along this coast where the shells still remain in huge heaps, as it took many hundreds of the shellfish to create 1 ounce of dye. So there's still big heaps of these shells today. After extracting the animal from its flesh, the flesh is allowed to decay. After decomposition, the sac must be found and the fluid within extracted. This results in 1 or 2 drops per shell. This fluid, if allowed to stand in strong sunlight for a few hours, turns from light green through blue to finally stop at a reddish purple. The dye color is a reddish purple, not the bright purple we're used to seeing in the movies. And Tyrian purple was so long in demand because it was a status symbol. And they say using this dye or making it fast was part of the secret that died with the Roman Empire. So we don't even know how to do it that fast anymore, apparently. Next, we've got Kermes red, a dried insect found along the Mediterranean and used extensively in Anatolia. This insect is cultivated, or farmed, therefore a little easier to collect, although it was still very labor-intensive. This dye produced a bright scarlet red, which was very durable. A piece of leather found in an Egyptian tomb dyed with Kermes was as bright as new. And this dye was very popular until modern synthetics. And they talk more about how pagan priests and the Coptic Egyptians and Roman Catholic priests have always worn defiled garments because they're not listening to these instructions. And by the way, in most of the memes that I see about this electrical property stuff, none of them are actually talking about the Old Testament and how this comes from religion. That might turn a bunch of people off on social media, but here it is. The pagan nations all used urine or dung in their coloring methods in ancient times and as well in modern times. And it is true, urea, which comes from urine, it's a nitrogen compound. Not only is it a common part of fertilizer, it is also still used in textiles. It is possible to synthesize urea. In fact, it was the first organic chemical synthesized, if I remember correctly, because we used urea in ocean fertilization experiments back when I worked in marine science. But in textiles in India and Bangladesh and stuff, I highly doubt it's created in a laboratory. It's much cheaper to get it from urine. And there's a bunch of biblical references here saying what should be made in linen, and it's pretty much everything. The ministers were to wear linen. The gifts that were requested of the children of Hashem were linen, no mention of wool. The sanctuary curtains were made of linen. The sanctuary veil was made of linen. The sanctuary door was made of linen. The sanctuary court was made of linen. The sanctuary gate was made of linen. The priestly garments were for glory and beauty, which were also made of linen. And here's something from Vayikra 26:21. Not sure if I said that correctly, but they're talking about mixing linen and wool together. And the punishment for disobedience is very specific. If you walk contrary to me and will not hearken to me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. That seems pretty harsh to me for wearing the wrong type of clothing. And I was an atheist before, by the way. I no longer am, but I don't adhere to a religion. And this was always one of the points that got me. Like, the punishment from God was very seemingly out of proportion with some of these sins. And they said above that if you didn't know, then it's not really a sin. But 7 times more plagues upon you is that seems incredibly harsh for this particular infringement. And there's more even in the New Testament here, which states that when the revelation of things to come was vouchsafed to John, the 7 angels, who held in their hands the past and future of mankind, were clothed in pure and white linen. And a final quotation from the same book of Revelation informs us that the garments of those chosen for eternal life and happiness will be of fine linen. They really liked linen back then. And yeah, I agree. Maybe we should now as well. And they say here that wool and cashmere in their EMF flow left to right in its energy fields, while linen EMF flows right to left, which is probably why it collapses the field when you put them together. Camel flows right to left, goat hair also right to left. And here, back to the study that these 2 rabbis performed, which the whole article is supposed to be about here. As our subjects were wearing linen garments, the computer analysis recorded that the body energy field increased to 25,000 units of energy around the body. So you get out even more than you put in. And again, I have to believe this is somewhat true. I don't know about the numbers, but I have to believe this is true from my experience with energy devices. Again, instantaneous, massive improvement for many, many people, especially those that are sick or injured or in any kind of pain. Those are the people that we would expect the best results with. Very, very quickly in the time that we can have a conversation. And they explain this as an antioxidant phenomena, an anti-inflammatory. Your immune system functions optimally when your body has an adequate supply of electrons, which are easily and naturally obtained by proper contact with the earth. This is why grounding or earthing is so popular now. Research indicates that electrons from the earth have antioxidant effects that can protect your body from inflammation and its many well-documented health consequences. And that's from Dr. Mercola. And there's a lot more in this article, but I think I'm about done with it. Here at the end, they were talking again about the Ag Environ machine used to measure the angstroms. And they mention another researcher here, Dr. Philip Callahan, a noted physician and researcher, was able to prove the existence of this energy using plant leaves attached to an oscilloscope. And he had discovered that flax cloth, as suggested in the books of Moses, acts as an antenna for the tachyon energy. Tachyon is probably a word you might have stumbled upon if you ever looked into energy devices. And by the way, tachyon energy devices work just about the same as frequency tuning discs. Costs a lot more, and they usually put tachyon energy into a crystal, a quartz crystal, which makes it a little bit more inconvenient because it's a bit bulky. A frequency tuning disc is just a brass washer with energy put into it, so it's flat. So you can wear it on a bracelet or an anklet pretty comfortably permanently, right? When you sleep, when you shower. It's one of the reasons I like frequency tuning discs, and I definitely love the cost of the discs. Just saying that we have played around with tachyon devices as well. Also seen very, very good results with that. And I'm sure there's other devices on the market now that are very similar. So they just connected this to tachyon, which is measured with a different device. And with that article out of the way, we can move on to other aspects of problems with clothing and textiles. So here I pulled something from the book Chronic Fatigue, Fibromyalgia, and Lyme Disease, 2nd edition by Burton Goldberg. It was a very good book. And they had a brief section there on textiles, and this is what I pulled out. Rosalind Anderson, PhD of Anderson Laboratories in Dedham, Massachusetts, analyzed the effect of gas emissions on laboratory mice based on over 300 carpet samples obtained through retail stores, carpet mills, or from patients' homes. All carpets had been in use from 1 week to 12 years. None were older than 40 years. So I'm not sure why they said 1 week to 40 years. Is it 12 or is it 40 years? Whatever. Dr. Anderson performed over 500 different experiments, and the results were disturbing. She found that carpet emissions decreased the breathing rate of mice immediately on contact, from a norm of 280 times per minute to a low of 235 after 8 minutes of exposure. So very small exposure here, pretty dramatic effect. When the mice were removed from exposure to the carpet emissions, their respiration rates became normal again. She next learned that one or more exposures of the mice to the carpet samples produced a range of alarming symptoms, including swollen faces, hemorrhaging beneath the skin surface, altered posture, loss of balance, hyperactivity, tremors, limb paralysis, convulsions, and even death from carpet emissions. Chemicals in the carpets affecting these mice. Remember, mice are very small, so any chemical exposure hits them harder than it hits us. Same with drug doses and nutrient doses and stuff. She then analyzed 125 carpet samples for signs of neurotoxicity, that is, emissions that harm brain cells or the nervous system. She found that 90% produced at least 3 or more severe neurotoxic effects in at least 25% of the mice. Over 200 different chemicals have been identified in the typical modern carpet, according to Anderson. And these can produce diverse toxic effects in humans, including flu-like symptoms, muscle pain, fatigue, tremors, headaches, lasting up to 16 weeks after exposure, as well as memory loss and concentration difficulties. When it comes to negative health effects from carpets, quote, "This is not a psychological phenomenon." All right, guys, and before we get to the actual book that this episode is based on, I do want to share some testimonials. This is a plug for our business. This is what we do. We help people get healthy. We do sell supplements, but we do also give you food advice and anything else that's relevant to you. If you reach out to any one of our coaches, which is on our contact page, the link is in the description, there's a questionnaire on that page. If you fill that out and send it to one of our coaches, they can give you a protocol to get started. And I just wanted to share with you some of the testimonials that have come in from Instagram, which is where we're most active. Because if you're dealing with practically any health problem, there's a very good chance that we can help you turn it around. And our advice is free. This first one is in response to one of our posts about gluten. This has nothing to do with what we sell. This is just us telling people, hey, if you go gluten-free, you're probably going to see great results. Someone said, I stopped eating it for 5 years and then got a lipid blood panel. The nurse was shocked and asked what I was doing because his LDL was way lower than it should be for a guy his age. This is in response to a post about birth control pills. Again, this has nothing to do with what we're selling, just information that we put out. Birth control pills lower all kinds of nutrients and mess up your hormones because birth control pills are hormones. So this woman said, hi, I'm 40 years old and I was on birth control pills for 13 years and I developed 2 kinds of liver tumors, 12 in total. I didn't know that it was unsafe to use until it was too late. Now, after years of good food and habits, the tumors are getting smaller. No thanks to the doctors. Thank you for everything you guys do in educating people about this topic. Next person here said, I've done the salt flush and acid reflux is gone. Thanks for the advice. The salt flush is something we give out to practically everyone. There are several other people that do recommend higher doses of salt for different reasons. This is a temporary one-time thing. And I played around with the doses for many years until I landed on what I call the salt flush. And yeah, I've seen amazing results with it over the years with many people, many different conditions, especially reflux. Reflux is crazy because usually it's so easy to reverse just with salt in most cases. Another person here about the salt flush. Thank you, my 11-year-old has no more tonsil stones after the salt flush and oil pulls. I'm not sure if I recommended the oil pulling, but I would bet the salt flush was more powerful than that when it comes to tonsil stones. A woman here said, Dr. Wallach and his associates, which is us, saved me from so many unnecessary surgeries related to Crohn's. He literally changed my life. I tear up when I see him. Yeah, we definitely get this all the time when it comes to digestive disorders because they're usually just caused by processed foods, and we just say, get off the processed foods. We recommend a digestion protocol as well, which is something we start almost everybody with, not just those with digestion problems. It's pretty much just high doses of enzymes, high doses of probiotics, and stopping problematic grains. And of course, you'll get more detail if you do reach out to us. And you can check out all of our other content. We've got tons of it out there. Some of it's here on the podcast, some of it's on YouTube, a lot of it is on Instagram. And someone here is saying, as a practitioner in California, we brought these supplements into our clinic, and using the doc's protocols, we have been tracking our clients' outcomes. They have been better and far more reaching results than before use. You owe it to yourself and your family to try it for 90 days. A little bit weird grammatically there, but that's awesome. Someone here is talking about cancer. We're not actually allowed to make any claims about cancer, but this person here is saying, I cured myself of cancer in 2006 simply by switching my diet and showed other people how to do the same. And they also cured themselves. Again, this is not me claiming it, this is them claiming it. We have seen dramatic turnarounds. We simply need to go back to the basics of using actual nutrition to heal our bodies. The human body needs 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, and 2 to 3 essential fatty acids to function properly. I use this protocol to heal disease and get people off synthetic drugs all the time. He's being a little bit loose with his wording there. We got to be careful about how we speak about these things, but congratulations to him. Someone here is saying, last month I saw your video post about statin drugs. I did the research and thankfully he stopped taking his statin drug. They're talking about somebody else here. There's been a great improvement, less memory loss, and less muscle cramping at night. Totally expected if you get off statin drugs. And we're not allowed to tell anyone to get off statin drugs, but we can post information, you can do your own research, and you can make your own decisions. Another person here with the salt flush. I was on heartburn medication for 15 plus years, listened to your podcast and did the salt flush. Bam, better, thank you. And we're not selling salt, remember. This is just part of the protocol. Someone here just said, I tried reducing the 12 bad foods, that's a list we have, by 60%, he said, not even 100%, by 60%, and I can tell you there's a massive difference. Yeah, a lot of people only take a fraction of our advice and still get a result. Someone here talking about a tumor. My second PET scan showed no tumor or even evidence of it. Also, the diagnosis of impending renal failure, kidney failure, is gone, as well as cancer in other parts of my chest. Praise God for nutrition and the help from Dr. Wallach. All right, one last one. There's a lot of them, but I hope to just give you an idea of what some of these changes we recommend can do for your life. Hi Ryan, I just wanted to let you know how much your advice has helped me in such a short amount of time. They shared some pictures of their skin, which were taken 3 weeks apart, and I'm experiencing almost no new breakouts just from avoiding the bad foods and following much of the protocol you suggest, as well as taking a couple of our supplements daily. My energy levels and mental clarity is so much better too. I'm so grateful that I came across your page. I really thought I would never break free of dermatologist offices and non-stop medication, but now I am very hopeful. I just wish I knew this information sooner. These are very common types of testimonials that we get, and if you do have any problem, I do hope that we can help you get on the other side of it. So go ahead and reach out to any one of our coaches. Once again, that is in the description, and I hope one day I can read one of your testimonials on here. All right, now turning to the book, Killer Clothes, How Seemingly Innocent Clothing Choices Endanger Your Health and How to Protect Yourself. As usual, when I read books, I save a bunch of points that I think are relevant and use them for these deep dive episodes and maybe something else. Maybe I include them in my own books one day. This is actually the only book that I've ever read specifically about clothing and health, but I found it very interesting. And the first chapter here is about tight clothing, and it starts off talking about bras. And this is something myself and others have believed for a long time, that bras, especially wired bras, are not good because they constrict blood flow and lymph flow. The breast, especially the female breast, is basically a lymphatic pump. It's full of lymph vessels. So it's easy to constrict that, especially when the wire bras pinch around the outside, they're not properly fitted. But this also goes for sports bras and stuff too. And by the way, we've had several women who came to us and said, hey, I felt a lump, or even a mammogram found a lump. What do I do about it? The first instruction, other than all the nutritional stuff, is to stop wearing a bra, especially a wired bra. If you have to wear one as little as possible. Definitely take it off when you get home. Definitely don't sleep in it. I understand that, especially for some large-chested women, that it's not that practical to go without a bra. It's not socially acceptable, but it is becoming more widespread where more women are going without a bra. And as an alternative to a bra, I do personally prefer, at least in the health sense, of just a padded shirt. Those are very popular now, where it's not going all the way around you and constricting your blood and lymph flow. And there is even just inserts that you can put into a regular shirt that basically just covers the nipple, which is the socially unacceptable part of not wearing a bra. And here we start out with Dr. Elizabeth Vaughn, CEO of Vaughn Medical Center in Greensboro, North Carolina, when she began to notice a relationship between the development of breast lumps and cysts and the wearing of bras. She personally treated more than 100 women who, in her words, chose to go bra-free after yet another biopsy of a lump in their breasts or aspiration of a cyst. Over 3 to 6 months, I didn't finish my sentence earlier. We've had many women who, after finding a lump somehow, went braless and the lump just went away. Often faster than 3 to 6 months. I've seen this in weeks, which to me means it wasn't really a cyst, because cysts usually do take 3 to 6 months to get rid of. With nutrition, we're talking about cysts anywhere on the body. If they're on the ovaries, it can take even longer because it's a systemic thing. Probably multiple deficiencies, processed foods, history of pharmaceutical drugs. Not going to get fully into that, but if it's just a lump, it could just be a lymphatic stagnation, like kink in a hose. And I have seen that go away quickly just by ditching the bra. Over 3 to 6 months, their breast cysts and lumps got smaller and less tender, and they developed no new lumps that we could detect. And this observation has since been demonstrated in practice by other healthcare providers. Breast cysts may be one of the flashing red warning signals for the onset of breast cancer. It was found that premenopausal women with breast cysts had nearly a 6-fold increased risk of breast cancer compared to women who didn't have breast cysts. So women with breast cysts are at an increased risk of breast cancer. That shouldn't come as a surprise, given that most women wear bras that are much too tight for them and have worn them this way since they received their first training bra as a young girl. According to the Johns Hopkins Breast Center, as many as 80% of women are actually wearing a bra that is the wrong size for them. A chronic condition that can produce health problems, particularly in the backs of women with large breasts. And here they're saying you don't need to be a Sherlock Holmes to connect this. That the impairment of lymphatic drainage, breast cysts, and breast cancer may be linked. A key circumstantial piece of evidence showing a link between bras and breast cancer emerged in 1991 from a study of breast size and breast cancer risk by researchers in the Department of Epidemiology at the Harvard School of Public Health, published in the European Journal of Cancer. This survey of thousands of women found that premenopausal women who do not wear bras had half the risk of breast cancer compared to bra users. Substantial risk reduction by a simple lifestyle change. The study authors speculated that this could be because premenopausal women are thinner and likely to have smaller breasts, but that observation received little or no support from subsequent medical studies. And the director of the Johns Hopkins Breast Center declared in 2007 that simply having breasts and being female places all women at risk. Women with size 32 AA bras get breast cancer just like someone with 46 double Ds. They say this study should have set off alarm bells within the health field, but it didn't. More evidence here. Medical anthropologist Sidney Ross Singer began to notice that when his wife removed her bra, both of her breasts were outlined by dark red lines, marking the areas around her breasts and over her shoulders. The lines had been left by her bra. And this observation came in the wake of his wife's discovery in 1991 that she had a suspicious lump on her breast. And this gave rise to their theory. Could the constrictive nature of the brassiere have suppressed her lymphatic system, the internal network of blood vessels that flushes toxins from the breasts and other parts of the body? Can toxins accumulate in the breast tissue as a result of this constriction? Can that accumulation in turn trigger the growth of breast lumps and even the onset of breast cancer? To test this theory, Singer and his wife designed and carried out a bra and breast cancer study of 4,700 women ages 30 to 79 who were interviewed in 5 U.S. cities. About half had been diagnosed with breast cancer, the other half had no breast cancer diagnosis. The questions they asked each of these women included: does your bra ever leave red marks on your skin or cause irritation? How long do you wear your bra each day on the average? During what stages in your teenage and adult life did you not wear a bra? Striking differences emerged in the answers given by the breast cancer and non-cancer groups regarding bra usage and bra comfort. Only 1% of the cancer group wore their bras for fewer than 12 hours a day, compared to 20% of the non-cancer group. 18% of the cancer group wore their bras to bed, compared to just 3% of the non-cancer group. There were other statistically significant differences between the two groups. Only 4% of the cancer group had breastfed their children, for instance. And breastfeeding, by the way, is a known, agreed upon risk reducer for breast cancer. In fact, so is having children. So the more children you have, and at the younger age that you have them, the less risk there is for breast cancer. So earlier pregnancies, more pregnancies, and breastfeeding are all known to reduce the risk of breast cancer. So only 4% of the cancer group had breastfed their children, compared to 14% of the non-cancer group. Almost 0% of breast cancer victims regularly went braless before their diagnosis versus 5% of women in the non-cancer group who regularly went without bras. And they calculated the cancer risks as follows. There's a 6-fold greater incidence of breast cancer among women who wore a bra all day and to bed than among the general population. Going braless results in a 21-fold reduction in breast cancer. Breastfeeding affords 3.5 times the protection against breast cancer. One reason may be that breastfeeding stimulates greater drainage within the lymphatic system of the breasts, helping to prevent the accumulation of toxins. This observation is in line with other study findings that women who have never given birth have a higher incidence of breast cancer. And Singer wrote a book here called Dressed to Kill: The Link Between Breast Cancer and Bras. Quote, bras are not the cause of breast cancer, but they may be a trigger for it. And another book here, Cancer on 5 Continents, gives some other circumstantial support here. This is published by the International Association of Cancer Registries in France. Women with the lowest incidence of breast cancer live in cultures where bras are not part of traditional wardrobes. These cultures include populations in parts of India, Singapore, and some Indian tribal groups. As a follow-up to their US study, Singer and his wife did a survey of bra use and breast cancer in Fiji, where an estimated half of all women adhere to cultural tradition and refuse to wear Western-style bras. And the Fijian health minister told the couple that their bra and breast cancer theory made sense because, quote, our working women are now getting breast cancer. They are the ones who wear bras. The Singers examined several dozen case histories of breast cancer among Fijian women, and every woman turned out to have broken from cultural norms to become a bra wearer. We found that given women from the same village, with the same diet, the ones who developed breast cancer were the ones who wore bras. And others have claimed that, it's not true that wearing a bra, especially underwire bras, traps toxins by limiting lymph and blood flow in your breasts. But these claims are without documentation at all. They're just saying it's not true without backing it up. And there's some other medical research linking bras and disease. The heavier the bra material, the hotter a woman's breasts become, and this elevated breast temperature may contribute to the onset of breast cancer. This was the conclusion of a 1978 study in The Lancet by Dr. John M. Douglas of Los Angeles. He based his conclusions on examining several hundred women in his medical practice. Bras increase breast pain and discomfort, but when women discontinue wearing bras, the pain decreases or disappears. 2 British breast surgeons, Dr. Simon Cawthorne and Dr. Robert Mansell, studied 100 women for 3 months to see if going bra-free lessened breast pain. The findings were conclusive. A majority of premenopausal women did improve their breast health and comfort as a result of going breast-free. And by the way, I support this. Women, first of all, get diseases more than men. I know they live longer than men, but that's a statistical thing. Men do stupider things. We play with guns and dirt bikes, and men have much higher rates of suicide and violence. So statistically, men don't live as long, but with most diseases you'll look at, women get more of those diseases. And I believe this is because of many scams that have been perpetuated on women. I myself am in the health and beauty business, right? We sell supplements. That falls into the health and beauty segment of the economy. Women by far are the biggest customers in that segment. So although they do buy more supplements and herbs and all that stuff, some of which might be harming them, by the way. I talk to women all the time who have cupboards full of products and they don't actually understand what they're all doing. And when it comes to herbs and stuff, I don't even understand what they're all doing because herbs interact with each other. Herbs can be very, very powerful. Don't underestimate herbs. We use nutrients primarily. Herbs is more of a last resort for me. But many, many women, since they do care about their health more, they buy all these herbs, they buy all these supplements, and it could be harming them. They could be using them to excess. In fact, I just did an episode recently with Dr. Wendy Sellens, author of the book Breast Thermography Revolution, which I do recommend that book and that episode. And she talks about how certain supplements, especially flax and soy, wild yam, several essential oils, by her thermography research shows that these supplements increase estrogen dominance, and that shows up as vascularity in the breasts. And vascularity is a sign of cancer risk. Cancer creates new blood vessels to feed the cancer. Not going to go into the whole thing. Just saying women are targeted for a lot of this health and beauty stuff. And they spend so much more money than men, I believe, because they've been scammed. Who told women that bras were required? They buy makeup, obviously. Makeup, often, usually, probably more than half of all makeup products on the market and skin lotions and shampoos and all this stuff is toxic. Not just with chemicals, but also with heavy metals, including lead, including mercury. Big problem here. They wear uncomfortable clothing on purpose, right? High-heeled shoes, shoes that constrict their feet, tight clothing. Right now, we're just talking about bras, but this is part of it. Women also go to their doctor more than men. This is actually the prime reason I believe that they get certain diseases at way higher rates than men, especially MS, big one. Estimated 3 to 4 times more women get MS than men. Why? Because as a young girl, they're given birth control pills, painkillers, antibiotics, antihistamines, normal over-the-counter drugs that us men take too, but in lower quantities. We don't trust our doctor as much. We don't care as much. We obviously don't take birth control. And when it comes to certain so-called preventative measures like, oh, take an aspirin every day to reduce your risk of heart disease, which I do not believe is true at all, women are the ones that listen to that and do it. And again, in my business, I primarily deal with women. Even though the majority of our social media following are boys and men, the majority of our customers and distributors are women. And definitely when it comes to the tough cases, serious diseases and stuff, the majority are women. And a big part of that is because they started listening to their doctors younger, started taking pharmaceutical drugs younger. And I can't tell you how many times I've been speaking with a man and a woman at the same time, either in real life or on Zoom or something. And the man's standing tall, he eats cheeseburgers and drinks beer and smokes cigarettes, and he doesn't care. He salts his food, he eats his butter. His wife pleads with him to stop the salt and stop the cholesterol, even though salt and cholesterol are essential. Again, this is another thing. Doctors and mainstream medicine and mainstream media has told women, well, it's told all of us, but women are the only ones who've listened, to lower your salt, lower your cholesterol. Women are the ones that fell for the low-fat movement. Low-fat foods are targeted primarily to women. Even look at the labels. A lot of them are pink. On that note, we've probably all heard of the pink tax, where a man's razor and a woman's razor are essentially the same thing, but the woman's costs more because it's pink. They call it the pink tax. So women are scammed heavily in this business. And yeah, when I'm talking to a man and a woman together, they eat practically the same thing. They're the same age. They've lived in the same house for 40 years. The man works in a toxic factory and the woman's on disability in a wheelchair, obese, with MS or cancer or something. Why? The woman's been listening to the doctor the whole time. The man never cared. He kept eating cheeseburgers and drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. Not saying those things are healthy, but the fact that the man won't go to the doctor as much, won't take the drugs more often than women will, is the reason that he's standing and she's in a wheelchair. Not kidding. I've seen such dramatic differences between the man and the woman, where ostensibly they should be sharing the same environment and basically the same diet, but one is in way worse health than the other. The woman's not putting salt on her food, the man is. The woman's using margarine, the man's using butter. The woman's eating tofu, the man's eating steak. And on top of all that, women menstruate, which means they bleed, which means they lose more nutrients than men, all else being equal. Exact same lives, exact same diet, exact same body weight. The woman loses more minerals and other nutrients. All of your essential nutrients are in your blood. When you bleed, you lose more nutrients. This is why women have anemia far more than men. And they also have children. Childbirth is one of the biggest nutritional burdens on the body that anyone can ever experience. So just by nature, women have it worse off. It means they need to supplement more to make up for their losses. And they just so happen to care more. So they listen to doctors and they spend more money on their health. They spend more money on their beauty. And most of that stuff is actually toxic for them and contributing to their chronic disease. And we can get back to the text here. Pressure on the breasts from bras can elevate the core temperature of the body and suppress the production of melatonin, an important antioxidant for immune system health. We'll do a melatonin episode here eventually. Melatonin also has anti-cancer properties that are useful in preventing breast cancer. And in the year 2000, that was the finding of two researchers at Japan's Nara Women's University who studied and measured the sleep-wake cycles of 10 women aged 18 to 23 to document the effect of bras on body temperature and melatonin levels. Small sample size there, but in 2002, 6 other Japanese researchers did a study that documented how skin pressure as a result of wearing bras affects the autonomic nervous system in a harmful way. Our data indicate, wrote the researchers in the Journal of Physiological Anthropology and Applied Human Science, that the higher clothing pressures exerted by a conventional brassiere have a significant negative impact on the autonomic nervous system activity, which is predominantly attributable to the significant decrease in the parasympathetic, which is the relaxation nervous system, parasympathetic, as well as the thermoregulatory sympathetic nervous activities. Big words there. But decrease their relaxation nervous system. It's the same nervous system, but we categorize it as sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Sympathetic is your fight or flight response, your stress response. Parasympathetic is your rest and digest response. Since the autonomic nervous system activity plays an important role in modulating the internal environment of the human body, excess clothing pressures caused by constricting types of foundation garments on the body would consequently undermine women's health. So tight clothing undermines women's health. And beginning in 1967, a series of studies in the Journal of the American Medical Association and elsewhere documented how bras that are manufactured with spandex fibers can cause skin problems in some bra wearers due to contact with the chemicals used in the production process that remain in the garments. Remember, guys, anytime you buy a new pair of clothing, a new couch, a new carpet, a new car, you smell that smell, right? That new car smell, that new fabric smell. That is chemicals. Fabrics do not smell like that. And as I talked about in a previous episode with Mike from Safeguard Solutions, he goes in and inspects homes for mold, EMF, and chemical residues like formaldehyde, which is one of the most problematic chemicals used in textile manufacturing. He talks about how what they do to get rid of that new carpet smell is to actually heat it all up. They'll heat the entire house up, which dissipates the chemicals faster. Because if you can smell it, it's affecting you. Old clothing does not have that smell. And honestly, I didn't save everything in this chapter, but it's a pretty good chapter. So I'm just going to keep reading it. Breast cancer specialists are in general agreement that about 85% of the 200,000 women in the United States who are diagnosed with the disease each year have no inherited genetic predisposition. I don't believe anyone has a genetic predisposition, but lots of people do. But in general agreement, about 85% have no genetic connection here, which means that unhealthful lifestyle choices and the absorption of environmental pollutants account for the vast majority of breast cancer cases. And the skin, of course, is our largest organ. It can absorb chemicals, whether those chemicals are in cosmetics, skincare products, or clothing. But here, interesting, when toxins enter through the mouth and end up in the intestines, they're channeled by the blood into the liver, where detoxification naturally occurs. When toxins are absorbed through the skin, however, They bypass the liver. In fact, as toxicology specialist Dr. Samuel Epstein states in his 2009 book, Toxic Beauty, about toxins in cosmetics and personal care products, medical evidence exists that human skin is even more permeable than the nutrient-absorbing intestines, which makes the skin the primary way that toxins invade the body. So they're saying the skin can absorb more than the intestines. And by the way, intestinal absorption is easily compromised. You could be eating gluten or other inflammatory foods that inflame the intestines and decrease absorption. You could have low stomach acid, which decreases absorption. There's several ways that intestinal absorption can be decreased, but skin remains highly permeable, remains highly absorbent. Think about it too. If you have inflamed skin, like eczema, psoriasis or something, you can still absorb stuff. You can still absorb cream. Put a cream on, watch it absorb. And they do talk about preservatives like parabens and triclosan, other stuff in soaps and deodorants and other consumer goods. And they're saying the triclosan here is the most alarming because it's being added to synthetic clothing to prevent bacterial growth. Remember earlier about linen, one of the benefits they talked about was that it is resistant to bacteria and fungus. So with these synthetic materials, they have to add antimicrobial chemicals to it, which is absorbed in the skin. And they find these same chemicals in umbilical cord blood samples and breast milk of half of all women that the groups tested. So we know that this chemical bioaccumulates in the body easily and persists in the body over time. More here about detergents and stuff, but I am skipping forward to a 2006 study published in the Journal of Applied Toxicology, which found evidence that aluminum chloride, used in high concentrations in most antiperspirants, is a hormone-disruptive chemical that could trigger the onset of breast cancer. Study author Philippa Darber, PhD, expressed concern that aluminum chloride in antiperspirants is absorbed through the underarms and can accumulate in the adjoining breast tissue. And she also brought up the issue of chemical synergies from multiple chemicals in personal care products acting together inside the body. So even if they've been studied individually, we don't know how multitudes of chemicals interact with each other once they're in their body. Kind of like drugs. All drugs have side effects. But when you start using more than one drug, the side effects compound. They become less predictable. They become more pronounced. I definitely know this from my business. If somebody's on one drug, even if it's a very scary drug with lots of side effects, it's not as big a deal as someone who's on two or more or a big cocktail full of drugs. They're going to have way more side effects that are less predictable. They're going to be a way harder client to help get healthy. And here they're talking about lymphatic movement, which I should touch on. If you exercise, even if you don't, honestly, your blood moves around. Your blood has to move around. So just by getting your heart rate up, your blood moves around. Your lymph does not move around on its own. It's not pumped by muscles. Or your veins all have muscle pumps pushing them around all throughout the body. Lymph does not. So you actually have to physically move lymph around. You can't just get your heart rate up. So when you don't wear a bra, the breasts, especially the larger ones, naturally sway back and forth, up and down. That naturally moves the lymph around. And there are some great lymphatic exercises, by the way, that you can do. And I do talk about this in my books, especially in fake diseases. And you can find that in all my books, by the way, on my website, notusbooks.org. You can also find the free versions on the website, notusbooks.org. The YouTube video version, podcast version, it's all there on the website. All the stuff is on my website, notusbooks.org, because I do talk about this a fair bit. It is important. There are lymphatic exercises that you can do, not just walking without a bra. You can swim. You can use a swing set. You can use a rebounder, which is a small trampoline, very effective. You can use a chi machine, which is my favorite machine, CHI, chi machine. You can use a rumble pad or a vibration plate, same thing, different word. I call it a shaker machine. All of that can move your lymph around. I'm not going to go into it right now, just they're pointing out here that the bras stop that movement, so they stop the lymphatic flow. So you have one aspect where it's actually pinching, especially if it's ill-fitted, which constricts lymphatic movement. But then the very nature of the bra itself stops the breast from moving up and down side to side, which also limits lymphatic movement. And that lymph fluid might ordinarily carry away toxins stored in fat cells. And here's a quote from breastnotes.com. Unsupported breasts of any size will most likely move when the woman is walking or moving about. This is a natural movement, and there seems to be a reason for it. We have breast massage articles from several experts that address the question of breast movement and its relationship to the natural flow of lymphatic fluids in the breasts. And they say since there is no heart to move the lymphatic fluid, we must rely on body movement and muscular contractions to move the fluid. And by the way, the heart is not the only thing that moves blood around. It's the muscles on the ends of each vascular connection. Veins get smaller and smaller as they branch out from the heart. And at each node, this is like a tree, right? Tree's got a big, thick trunk. Then it's got big branches that branch out from it, and then smaller branches, and then smaller branches. At each one of those nodes in the body, there's muscles that push the blood around. And here they've got more stories of hundreds, if not thousands, of women who complained for a survey here in 2008 that their bras were creating serious rashes and even scarring of the skin on and around the breasts. In 2002, from the medical journal Lymphology, researchers presented study findings showing how normal breast lymph drainage is an important predictor of whether a woman with breast cancer will survive. If a breast cancer patient's lymph vessels are obstructed, her chances of survival were rated as poor, whereas women with normal breast lymph drainage had a 30% higher survival rate. Skipping forward, another point here from a 2002 study published in The Lancet that claimed that breast cancer among women in developed countries could be reduced by half if breastfeeding today were as common as a century ago. And the longer a woman breastfeeds, the more protection against breast cancer she is afforded. And there's some other studies here, but I've got to move forward. Don't want this to be a 5-hour episode. I recommend the book. It was pretty good. Here's a question that I know a lot of women are concerned about. Do bras really keep breasts from sagging? 3 medical researchers at the Atsuma Women's University in Tokyo, Japan, conducted a 1990 experiment in which 11 women, aged 22 to 39, wore bras for 3 months, and then for another 3 months, they went without bras. Measurements and photographs were taken once a week throughout the 6-month experiment. In all subjects, after 3 months of brassiere constraint, the under-bust circumference was smaller, but the chest circumference became enlarged. The distance between the right and left nipples became wider, and the breast tended to hang down. This is when they wore a bra. The change was more marked in obese subjects with pendant breasts. And when this type of subject wore a well-fitted brassiere for a long time, her breast form became developed. That is, her breasts hung down more. They sagged more. Ligaments in a woman's breasts hold the breasts up and in place. This is a misconception here. A lot of people think it's muscles that hold breasts in place. A lot of women in the gym doing bench press and dumbbell flies, trying to strengthen the upper chest muscles to hold their breasts up. Meanwhile, it's actually the ligaments, the connective tissue that holds the breasts up. I've been saying for a long time that we are a society deficient in connective tissue, meaning all societies prior to us modern people, all of them ate as much of the animal as they possibly could. They did not just eat the muscle. We only eat the muscle. That's what we call meat. There's a lot more of the animal. Muscle is the heaviest thing in an animal and in a human, but the second heaviest thing is connective tissue. Connective tissue makes up ligaments and tendons. It holds our blood vessels together. It holds our organs together. Obviously, our skin is made of connective tissue. So women who get stretch marks, or men, they gain and lose weight and they get stretch marks, that's a connective tissue deficiency. The 12-year-old kid that tears their Achilles tendon while playing soccer, we don't blame soccer. We blame a connective tissue deficiency. Why were their ligaments and tendons so weak in the first place? Because we do not eat connective tissue. Other cultures do. We might get a little bit of gelatin. Honestly, the average American's intake of gelatin comes in candy and jello. So that's not good. But gelatin is only one form of connective tissue. Again, other cultures, they eat the stomach lining, the intestines, right? The tripe, the menudo, right? Menudo is stomach lining. So is tripe, same thing. A lot of Westerners are now enjoying the Vietnamese dish pho or pho. That's got tripe in it. But that's not enough. We're just way behind. Again, this is why my buddies in the gym would tear their rotator cuffs. Again, we don't blame the bench press. We blame chronic connective tissue deficiency. We're not eating enough. Now certain supplements are becoming popular, like collagen peptides or glucosamine, chondroitin. These are all connective tissue components. but we're just not eating enough culturally. Farmers will sell the blood, which is extremely nutritious, by the way. They'll sell the blood, they'll sell the connective tissue, they'll sell most of the organs to animal food companies. That means our animals, our pets, our cats and dogs and rats are getting actually more important nutrient body components than we are in our diet. We do need protein to build our own protein, right? Meat is an excellent source of protein. We need that. We need protein somehow to rebuild our own muscles. We also need connective tissue to repair our own connective tissue. Just saying here, women at the gym pumping the bench press, hoping to improve their breast shape or to stop from sagging, you're doing it wrong. You need connective tissue supplements and eat them, included as part of your diet. We need a lot of this stuff. Again, it's part of your skin. People with varicose veins and hemorrhoids and stuff, that's a connective tissue deficiency. There's some other nutrients involved like vitamin C and copper and selenium and so on, but connective tissue is one of the biggest deficiencies in our society. So back to the text here, the more a woman wears a bra, the more those ligaments atrophy, shrink, getting weaker and smaller. The longer a woman goes braless, the more those ligaments strengthen over time. This is kind of like how exercise is well known to improve bone density, by the way, right? Put pressure on it, the body will build it more, even in a deficiency state. So use it or lose it. And if you take pressure off the breast with a bra, your ligaments, it says here, will atrophy. That is why some women experience soreness in their breasts when they go braless. The ligaments have weakened from lack of use. And here's a quote from Dr. Susan M. Love from her Dr. Susan Love's Breast book. She says, wearing a bra has no medical necessity whatsoever. The decision to wear a bra or not wear one is purely aesthetic or emotional. Here, another author, Dr. Christiane Northrup, from her book, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. And I read that book recently, actually. She says, stop wearing an underwire bra. Too often, this kind of bra cuts off circulation of both blood and lymph fluid around the breast, chest wall, and surrounding tissue. If you do wear one, limit your bra usage only to those absolutely necessary occasions. A sports bra is better than a wired bra. And if you do wear a bra during work or during the day, never ever wear it to bed. I never understood why any woman would wear a bra to bed. It doesn't look comfortable. I don't understand. Back to chemicals here. A team of Canadian science and chemists from Montreal examined the exposure of 1,169 postmenopausal women to about 300 chemical substances. What they found and reported in 2010 was that of the 300 substances that were analyzed in this epidemiological study, exposure to acrylics and nylon demonstrated the greatest association with breast cancer in women 50 to 75 years of age. These risks peaked for exposures before the age of 36 and increased with each additional decade of exposure. So the longer you wear these synthetic fabrics that are dyed with chemicals, and other chemicals are put in there as antiperspirants and anti-mold stuff, the greater your risk of breast cancer. And this risk was substantial, they say. And before moving on to shoes, they give us 7 bra-free options here. Some suggestions. I already mentioned a couple. Wear a sleeveless undershirt. That's number 1. Most often sold as menswear. Just wear a men's undershirt. Thicker the better if you want to cover the nipple. Wear a camisole. Whether silk or cotton, these garments have adjustable clasps and give the appearance of a bra to observers. That's number 2. Number 3, wear a vest. Either a men's or women's casual vest can be worn over your blouse to hide the outline of your breasts. Number 4, wear a loosely fitted top. Depending on your breast size, loose tops can camouflage your breasts effectively. Number 5, wear a shirt with pockets. Pockets camouflage the outline of your breasts and nipples. Number 6, wear a bust-free bra. These are 2 cups that cling inside your outer garment's fabric. Again, I've seen these. These are just inserts that you can buy, and you can just put them in any shirt. Or wear new bra cups. You can check out nubra.com. That's Nubra.com, which are adhesive cups that can cover your breasts to keep your nipples from showing through your outer clothing. And now we move on to shoes. So a lot of people understand now that wearing tight shoes is not healthy. Our feet are supposed to be spread out wide for better grip, and we've got a lot of nerve endings in our feet, right? If you've ever gotten a foot massage or acupuncture or something, then you know that the feet are very important for nerve connections. And those nerves travel all throughout the body, and constricting your feet, it actually changes the skeletal structure of the feet. And in my business, I actually ask people, it's optional, but it's on our questionnaire, show us a picture of your fingernails or your toenails. And a lot of times we get pictures of the toenails because, especially women, they have nail polish on their fingers. So we see a lot of feet pictures, and a lot of those feet are in horrible condition. And yes, I'm looking at the nail, I'm looking for fungus, I'm looking for zinc deficiency, I'm looking at the skin around the nail for fatty nutrient deficiencies. But I notice a lot of crumpled up feet, and they look painful. They look awful, honestly. It's not physically attractive. And that is caused by shoes. It's 100% caused by shoes. I personally hate shoes. I don't like wearing shoes very often. I do wear them if we have to go outside to the grocery store or something, but I don't like wearing shoes. Right now, I'm in the office. I'm not wearing shoes. There's the constriction factor, the fact that it builds up moisture in there. So all kinds of things like mold and fungus can proliferate in there. And the chemicals used in footwear and in socks can leach out more when it's wetter and hotter, which of course happens just when you wear shoes. So I try not to wear shoes as much as possible. Most of the time I'm wearing bison moccasins made out of bison leather, because there is also the aspect of grounding. Wearing leather, especially leather soles, is going to allow you to ground to the earth. Rubber soles cut off your connection with the earth. And the ground is full of electrons, and you can accept those electrons into your body. Those electrons will have an antioxidant effect. A lot of people know about this. Grounding is big now. Earthing is big. So a lot of people are grounding, and that's great. But for most of us, most of the time, we're wearing these toxic shoes that are crimpling up our feet and exposing us to a lot of chemicals in those shoes. And we're going to get to that in the text here, but I'd like to give you a little personal story. At one point, about 10 years ago, myself and my best friend, Chef Norman, we had nothing. We were super poor, super broke. But one thing that Chef Norman did that was smart before we lost everything was he bought a property out in the middle of nowhere. And we now live near there. We live in the closest town now. But he bought a property, and we showed up with all of our stuff in a truck. We spent our last bit of money moving our stuff there. He had an apartment. We moved all the stuff from the apartment, bought a bunch of wood, and built a cabin in the woods on his property. We had no job, no income. We had 6 chickens, 6 laying hens. So we would get between 6 and 9 eggs a day. We had a little garden with some peppers and some herbs and stuff. And we had a sack of potatoes, and we lived off of that food. We had no running water, no water on the property at all. We're still working on getting a well drilled. It's very expensive. So we brought in jugs of water from the spring down the road. Luckily, we had friends in the area that were willing to help us out a little bit, pick us up now and then, take us to the spring, because it was a long walk to that spring, and let us shower and feed us a meal now and then. But for the most part, myself and 3 of our friends, actually, 4 of us total, until we kicked one guy off the property, then it was 3 of us. We stayed out there with no showers, no toilets, not even an outhouse, no running water, barely any food. We were smelly, we were dirty most of the time, but I still fantasize about that time, actually. I still kind of wish that I could go back to that time. Now I have a lot of responsibilities, and I have to work a lot to maintain this. And yeah, very often I think, wow, I wish I could just go back and live in the forest. And one of the things that I liked about it was that I didn't wear shoes. Vast majority of the time, I was just barefoot. And we're in bug country, by the way. We're getting eaten by mosquitoes and flies and all kinds of stuff all the time. I guess you kind of get used to it. My feet got super tough. It was only a summer, by the way, that we were out there full time. Cabin's still there. The property's still there. We still like to go there. But I've never stayed out there for an extended time again. But I miss it. And my feet got super tough. I got super good at walking through the forest, over rocks, all kinds of stuff. I hardly even noticed that I wasn't wearing shoes after a while. And ever since that time, it's been hard to go back to shoes. I really do hate wearing shoes. Your toes do start to spread out more after a while. They get a better grip. They get stronger. It was pretty cool to me. And I know I've lost that. A couple of weeks ago, I went out on a little adventure with my friend. And I went barefoot when we went on a little cruise down the river on a paddle board, 2 of us on the paddle board. and I was barefoot, and yeah, I got beat up a little bit going down the hill into the river and up the hill out of the river, stepping on thorns and yeah, rocks, and my feet are definitely not as tough anymore. But I am hoping that there's a time in the future where I can live barefoot once again. So in the book here, the first thing they're talking about is chemicals. And they're talking about those in leather right now. Up until the mid to late 20th century, vegetable chemicals were used to tan leather, to prepare it to be made into shoes. But chromium tanning replaced vegetable tanning because manufacturers found that it could be a cheaper and faster process. Now, chromium is an essential nutrient, but it's also one of them that can become a toxic heavy metal, especially when used in industrial quantities and industrial forms. So chromium can be a carcinogen. And because most shoes today are made in developing countries with almost non-existent safety and environmental rules, chromium contamination of people and ecosystems is disturbingly common. So another problem here is when manufacturing wastes are dumped into nearby bodies of water or incinerated, both of these distribute these toxins. And rubber-soled shoes usually contain lead and plastics. Yeah, it's true. Why was lead in plastic? Because lead is often used in pigments. So you could be exposing children, especially, which are more susceptible to any of these heavy metal contaminants. Again, they weigh less, so the same amount will affect them more compared to a full-grown adult. So there could be lead in the baby shoes and the kids' shoes and the adult shoes. And as the shoes are worn, particles degrade into the atmosphere and soil. Then they talk about how a vast majority of foot problems are the result of incorrect or poorly chosen footwear. And there was a study here that found that 4 in 10 women purchase and then wear uncomfortable shoes because they are considered fashionable. So they purposely choose uncomfortable shoes because they're fashionable. And even 17% of the men surveyed admitted to intentionally buying shoes in an incorrect size because of how they look when worn. I've done this before, especially when I was poor in the thrift shop. You know, there's a pair of shoes that's suitable to me, but it's half a size too small or too big, and I've bought those shoes and been uncomfortable in them. Common foot problems caused by poor shoe choices include blisters created by the friction from ill-fitting shoes, corns caused by rubbing and pressure, bunions in which foot compression creates a painful swelling on the sides of the big toes. And actually, I had some bunions forming recently. I just went out on a painting spree. I like to spray paint. And when winter ended, there's this sweet spot before the bugs come out in spring where I just really wanted to get as much painting done as I could. And I do wear boots for this because I'm going up and down hills and ladders, and it's not something I really want to do barefoot. So I wear boots, and the boots that I was wearing, yeah, were really making my feet hurt. I got some big calluses pretty quickly on it because there was a lot of rubbing going on. I don't know if I'd call them a bunion, but it was painful. I was in pain. Could also cause ingrown toenails caused by tight footwear, especially when exacerbated by tight socks. And they even speculate here that swollen ankles could be a complaint caused by poor footwear. High heels are particularly unsafe, not only shortening calf muscles, but also increasing pressure on the back and knees, which are all conditions that increase the wearer's prospect of experiencing dangerous falls. And they don't like flip-flops either, because they're loose, and even though they've been worn by humans for thousands of years, it doesn't mean flip-flop sandals are good for your feet, especially if you wear them frequently. They give you no support and don't protect your feet. There's a study here that found that people who wear flip-flops take shorter steps, and the heels of their feet hit the ground with less vertical force than when they wear other shoes. The cumulative impact of this repeated motion is pain in the wearer's ankles, feet, and legs. And that was the shoe chapter. It was pretty short. I skipped a lot too. But here there's an insert called a tight-fitting clothes infection warning for women. You may think that those tight-fitting jeans and short skirts make you look and feel sexy. But would you still wear them if the unexpected price you had to pay was a serious vaginal infection? A 1983 study in the American Journal of Public Health examined 160 women and divided them into 2 equal groups. One that primarily wore tight-fitting garments 80% or more of the time, and one that primarily wore loose clothes 80% or more of the time. The results were clear. Our present study confirms our previous observation that wearing of tight-fitting clothing coupled with nylon underwear and/or pantyhose creates more warmth and moisture in the vaginal and cervical area, thus producing an environment favorable for the colonization of candida and other yeasts. And actually, the book I just finished, Breast Thermography Revolution by Dr. Wendy Sellens, she also had a segment in her book talking about tight-fitting clothing, and she actually recommended no panties. She talked more about it changing the pH of the vagina. And on the next chapter here, there wasn't actually a lot that I saved, but I do want to read you a little bit that I didn't save. They say here that both synthetic and natural textiles, as they go from fiber to fabric, pass through 4 distinct production phases. In stage 1, fiber preparation, the fibers are cleaned and undergo spinning and weaving. Silk and cotton are usually clean fibers and just require dry processing to remove dirt particles. Raw wool, however, can contain up to 40% its weight in impurities that include pesticides, wool grease, and dirt and perspiration residues. All require removal and disposal before the next stage of production. The most common solvent used by manufacturers to clean wool is a chemical called trichloroethylene. This substance has been classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as a probable human carcinogen because it induces lung and liver tumors in laboratory test animals. What makes the use of this chemical more distressing is that no safe exposure levels exist. And as the European Union's Existing Chemicals Bureau said in 2004, for carcinogenicity and mutagenicity endpoints, there is no identifiable threshold exposure level below which the effects would not be expressed, so there are health concerns at all exposure levels. In stage 2 of production, fibers are singed and sized, scoured to further remove impurities, and finally put through a bleaching process that may include optical brightening. They use chemicals here that may be hormone disruptors, and of course, may be released into the environment, depending on where it's manufactured, what their standards are like. And of course, those bleaching chemicals can be a concern here as well. Skipping through a lot of this. Stage 3 involves dyeing or printing of fabrics. The dyes, of course, can be problematic. There are at least a dozen different dye processes, and all carry some risks. Not going to go through each of the dyes. Finally, in stage 4 of textile production, a wide range of finishes are applied depending on the fabric and the claims made by the manufacturers to consumers, like stain resistance, smell resistance. There's all kinds of claims that could be made. Those are all based on chemicals put into the fabrics. Wrinkle-free and shrinkage-free garments, this is all done by chemicals. Same with flame retardants, bacterial and fungicidal additives. And then they have a big segment here on formaldehyde. I already mentioned that formaldehyde is a very, very common additive in all textiles. Clothing, carpets, furniture, wood. And for many, the consequences of this are going to be obvious. Of course, formaldehyde is a very toxic poison, but no country in the world bans its use in textiles. Most governments regulate its levels and are in some disagreement over what levels of this chemical are considered safe for human contact. For example, China limits it to 20 ppm. Japan, the limit is 75 ppm. Netherlands is 120 ppm. In the United States, there are only voluntary standards. So there are no laws or regulations mandating formaldehyde levels. And even though some of these countries do set standards, that doesn't mean the standards are followed or that they're punished if you don't follow them. For example, this became the focus of a spirited debate in 2007, when a New Zealand television show broadcast the results of laboratory tests of Chinese clothing imports that apparently found dangerously high levels of formaldehyde. Concentrations were up to 900 times the safe level in wool and cotton clothes manufactured in China. And these were from children's clothing, including pajamas, trousers, and other garments. There was a girl's top that had a total reading of 230 ppm. Women's corduroys, 290 ppm, school shorts, 630 ppm, a Spider-Man t-shirt with 1400 ppm of formaldehyde. Pajamas, 3400 ppm, wow. Children's pants with a total of 16,000 ppm. 100% woolen pants totaled 17,000. 100% cotton trousers totaled 17,000 again. And stain-resistant pants totaled 18,000 ppm, the highest here in the study. Remember that even China put the limit at 20 ppm. This is pretty alarming. In 1999, a team of Japanese scientists took 27 non-iron shirts and measured the quantity of free formaldehyde in each, before and after washing and drying, every week for 6 months. About 1/3 of these shirts contained between 75 ppm and 202 ppm of free formaldehyde before washing. After 6 months, the quantity of free formaldehyde in 12 of the shirts still exceeded 75 ppm, which meant that bound formaldehyde in the fabric had continued leaching out over time. A person wearing one of those shirts would have been absorbing a constant stream of formaldehyde molecules for 6 months. So even I thought that, oh, you could just wash it a few times, wash it even once, that should reduce the chemical residue. You know, you can smell a new shirt and then wash it, smell it again. It doesn't smell as chemically most of the time. But apparently, the formaldehyde that's bound in the fabric is going to continue to come out over time. Humidity and high temperatures can also cause an increased release of the chemical, which is, of course, what happens when you wear clothing. The U.S. National Cancer Institute points out that since 1987, the occupational exposure for standard formaldehyde in U.S. workers had been just 1 ppm, averaged over an 8-hour workday. In 1993, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, changed the law and lowered that standard to only 0.75 ppm of exposure. These regulatory changes occurred in the wake of National Cancer Institute findings that a 30% increase in lung cancer had developed among workers who were exposed to formaldehyde on the job. And I worked with formaldehyde at one point when I worked in marine science, and we had to take water samples and culture them in big vats and then analyze what grew in those vats. And I'm talking about plankton here. So in order to analyze the plankton, we had to put it in formaldehyde. And we also had to do this with jellyfish. I'm just saying that when I had to work with them, we had some pretty stringent safety standards. You had to work under a fume hood, first of all. I had to wear full gear, right? Lab coat, glasses. And you definitely have to clean the entire area very thoroughly once you're done your work. And you could still smell it. You're still being exposed to it, even with the fume hood on full blast. And they're saying that this exposure to the formaldehyde could cause burning and tearing or irritation of the eyes, irritation of the upper respiratory tract, bronchitis, asthma, severe coughing, headaches, heart palpitations, and serious damage to the lungs, and even death at a big enough exposure could kill you. Of course, children may be more susceptible than adults, as with all chemicals. And of course, there's even chemicals in cotton here, especially if it's not organic. Even if it is organic, they could lie because there's very few people actually looking at this and punishing companies if they lie on their labels. They're again talking here about the myth that if you wash clothes, it removes the harmful chemicals. It removes some of them, but there's a lot of them in there, so it just keeps leaching out over time. And not going into all of these chemicals, but they're talking about one chemical here that can be absorbed through the scrotum, because underwear, because the scrotum is about 20 times more permeable to chemicals than his other skin. I didn't know that. 20 times more permeable to chemicals, the scrotum. Skip forward to the next chapter here. They're talking about formaldehyde again. A 2001 study in the journal Brain Research showed how repeated low-level exposures to formaldehyde made test animals much more reactive to future exposure to formaldehyde. So you get more reactive to the chemical over time. They say here, people who are concerned about chemical overloads should be anti any garment that is advertised as being anti-shrink, antibacterial, antimicrobial, anti-static, anti-odor, anti-flame, anti-wrinkle, anti-stain, or any of the other anti-easy care garment finishes, because all of that is done with chemicals. And there was a scandal here with some clothing, some pajamas that were causing serious rashes that resembled burns in children. The pediatricians who examined the children said the injuries looked like chemical burns. Hundreds more parents came forward with their own horror stories and postings on the internet, and they shared some of those postings. And a lot of the book here is about chemicals, and I'm skipping tons of it. I didn't anticipate this episode being that long. The next point I saved here, they're talking about the effects on muscle and muscle performance of synthetic fibers. And of course, you probably know, Basically, all athletic wear is synthetic fibers. There's no linen yoga pants that I'm aware of. They love their tight spandex and stuff for cyclists and so on. In an eye-opening study from 2001 that got little or no attention in the United States, 5 physiologists from Poland compared muscle function in the forearms of test subjects who wore either natural or synthetic fiber clothing. And it may not seem like a significant issue to study at first blush, but it turns out that the difference in effects between natural and synthetic fibers can influence performance for a wide variety of professionals, from people who sit at computers for long hours to manual laborers to professional athletes. 12 male volunteers aged 24 to 27, all of whom were in good health, wore long-sleeve shirts made of linen for about 5 hours, and then wore similar shirts made of polyester for another 5 hours. Their forearm muscles were monitored with electrodes that measured skin temperature and the conduction velocity of motor fibers in the muscle. This was done as they worked at computers, read books, or just conversed with each other. No negative changes in muscle functioning were observed when the test subjects wore the natural linen fabric shirts. However, a range of muscle disruptions occurred when the men wore the polyester shirts. The first major difference was that the synthetic fiber created an electrostatic field emission over the surface of the muscle, which the natural fabric didn't create. A second major effect was that covering the surface of the forearm caused the temperature to increase significantly in the subjects dressed in the synthetic clothing. Conduction velocities in the motor fibers within the nerve branches of the muscle underwent a lower amplitude when test subjects wore the synthetic shirt. So they summarized here, temporarily covering the tested forearm muscles with synthetic clothing changes the pattern of motor unit activity. This is expressed by the low-frequency spontaneous activity of the muscle fibers during the state of rest, or by diminished high-frequency activity of the muscle units during the voluntary movements. Fluctuations are the reason for the desynchronization in muscle motor units and may lead to a greater tendency to fatigue while wearing the synthetic garments. The electric charges gathered on the polyester cloth surface, which cause an electrostatic field on the skin cloth zone, together with an increase in skin temperature in the polyester cloth, may be the cause for the observed changes. And they confirmed here too that the higher level of heat resistance of linen cloth demonstrates its better thermal protection against cold than in the case with polyester cloth. Next point I saved here, they're talking about this static electricity thing and they're connecting it to sperm counts. Average sperm counts worldwide dropped 50% in the last half of the 20th century, and according to the World Health Organization, up to 12% of all couples with women of childbearing age are now infertile. Environmental effects such as hormone-disrupting synthetic chemicals are certainly one cause of the infertility epidemic. But there is evidence that we also have synthetic clothing to blame. I would blame nutrient deficiencies as well, increase in pharmaceutical drugs, increase in EMF, lots of stuff here, but sure, this could be a factor. It took putting polyester underpants on a group of male dogs to establish the first scientific link between synthetic undergarments and infertility in human males. This 1993 study, published in the medical journal Urological Research, described how researchers put loose-fitting polyester underpants on 12 dogs over a period of 24 months, 2 years, during which time their semen quality, testicular temperature, hormones, and testicular biopsies were examined. A second group of 12 dogs wore loose-fitting cotton underpants over the same period. Wearing polyester produced a degradation of the testes and significant decreases in the sperm counts for all dogs in the first group. The dogs outfitted with cotton undergarments, by contrast, experienced no such reproductive side effects. Very interesting study there. Ditch the fake underwear gentlemen. They assumed here that the electrostatic potentials generated by the polyester fabric played a role there. A year earlier, another medical study, this one published in the journal Archives of Andrology, had tested the electrostatic potentials generated by various textile fabrics, including polyester. 21 volunteers had been divided into 3 groups. The first group wore 100% polyester underpants. The second group wore a 50-50 polyester cotton mix, and the third group wore 100% cotton. Over 4 days of wearing the various fabrics, an electrostatic kilovoltometer measured each group's electrostatic field across the scrotal area. The cotton underpants created no electrostatic field, but the polyester pants showed a high electrostatic charge, and the mixed polyester cotton garments also generated a charge, but less so. 4 years later, in the same journal, 1996, They published a study that made the link between polyester and aberrations in male sexuality more compelling. 50 men were recruited and divided into 4 test groups to measure the effect of different types of textile underpants on sexual desire and the frequency of sexual activity. The underpants in these groups were made of 100% polyester, or a 50-50 polyester cotton mix, or 100% cotton, or 100% wool. Sexual behavior was assessed before and after 6 and 12 months of wearing the pants, and 6 months after their removal. Behavioral response was rated as potent if the subject's penis became erect, entered the vagina, and ejaculated. The electrostatic potentials generated on the penis and scrotum were measured by an electrostatic kilovoltometer. At the end of the study period, it was found that the men who wore 100% polyester and the polyester cotton mix underpants experienced significantly reduced sexual desire and sexual activity. The polyester-containing pants generated electrostatic potentials, which may induce electrostatic fields in the intrapenile structures and could explain the diminished sexual activity. The cotton and wool textiles did not generate electrostatic potentials. Thus, polyester underpants could have had an injurious effect on human sexual activity. And there may be other factors as well. They note here, natural cotton, even when tightly fitted, still enables the skin to breathe, whereas synthetic clothing that fits tightly tends to trap body heat and encourages the skin to more readily absorb chemicals that are off-gassed by the synthetic fibers. And in 1996, a study published in The Lancet concluded that men who are trying to father a child shouldn't wear tight-fitting underwear of any sort because it can raise testes temperature to levels that interfere with sperm production. We've probably all heard that. You know, you sit in a hot tub for a while, basically kill your sperm. I know some guys who even use this as birth control. They purposefully heat themselves up before they go on a date. And they talk here more about the highly permeable nature of the scrotum skin, and that underwear very commonly just have tons of chemicals in them, just like other garments. Another chemical here they're talking about, skipping forward, is PFOA, perfluorooctanoic acid. Thyroid disease was linked to PFOA exposure in a 2010 study published in the journal Environmental Health Perspectives. People with higher concentrations of PFOA in their blood were twice as likely to develop thyroid disease than people with lower concentrations. And that finding was based on studying blood samples from 3,966 adults and comparing them to the incidence of thyroid disease. And in another study on this chemical in 2009, published in Human Reproduction by a team of researchers from the UCLA School of Public Health, linked PFOA to infertility in women by measuring the levels in 1,240 women from the Danish National Birth Cohort at intervals between 4 and 14 weeks of their pregnancies. The researchers discovered that the likelihood of infertility increased by 60 to 154% for women with the highest levels of PFOA in their blood, compared to women with the lowest levels. The menstrual cycles of women with the most PFOA also became irregular. Higher PFOA levels also delay pregnancy in those women who are eventually able to have a child. An earlier human study had shown that PFOA may impair the growth of babies in the womb. 2 epidemiological studies also uncovered evidence that PFOA can disrupt fetal growth. Researchers suspect that these stain resistance chemicals, that's what PFOA is used for, stain resistance, can similarly affect men's sperm quality, which presents another layer of obstacles to highly industrialized nations that are trying to maintain their fertility and birth rates. Yeah, infertility is a huge problem. Skipping forward, another chemical that can affect sperm quality, chemical is called permethrin, is a pesticide which significantly decreased sperm quality, affecting reproduction in lab animals that were exposed to their additive effects. And in the 60-day period of that study, daily treatment on the skin resulted in hormone disruption, reproductive abnormalities, and other problems. Another study, when permethrin was applied to the skin of lab rats, both by itself and combined with DEET, another pesticide, all behavioral measures were impaired and exposed induced neurological degeneration in the brain. Again, children have higher absorption levels than adults. And the next point I saved here is about laundry detergents. 6 top-selling laundry products were tested by University of Washington researchers, and each one was found to release at least one chemical regulated as toxic or hazardous under federal laws. But none of those chemicals were listed on the product labels. Yeah, that's one big problem here. You do have to list food ingredients and food products and supplements and stuff. You have to list the ingredients, but companies get around this sometimes by using patented labels like, oh, this is our patented active ingredient. So they can stuff things like MSG in there or, just chemicals and additives that consumers are concerned about. So if a company's going to put MSG in their potato chips, for example, a lot of times they'll just hide it under natural flavors or their patented name for their flavor complex. But when it comes to household products, a lot of times, or basically none of the time, they don't have to list any of their ingredients, really. Sometimes they do. Labeling laws are complicated, but there's a lot of stuff that's not on the label. I know that for a fact in the supplement business. It's definitely true in the food business. And I would assume it's even more true in the consumer product business. For example, I already mentioned I like to spray paint. I know spray paint is loaded with toxic chemicals, but if you read the label, it just says, oh, this is explosive, this is corrosive, this is poisonous, right? It's got the warning labels on it, but it doesn't actually tell you the full list of ingredients. Next point I saved, they're talking about dry cleaning. If you've ever taken clothes home from a dry cleaner and immediately tore open the plastic bags to extract the garments, you know how the clothes emit a chemical odor that you can't help but inhale. That's the residue of perchloroethylene, or PERC for short, the chemical solvent used by 3/4 of dry cleaning businesses in the United States. And while PERC is considered to be an efficient cleaning agent for clothing, it's also highly toxic and responsible for a wide range of well-documented harmful effects on human health. The International Association for Research on Cancer calls PERC a probable carcinogen based on animal testing and research studies going back 3 decades in Environmental Health Perspectives Journal and other medical science journals. The studies have outlined PERC's many negative effects on health, which occur when it is inhaled or when it comes into contact with the skin. And there is a researcher here who has described how studies have found that PERC exposure increases a person's risk of bladder, esophageal, and cervical cancer, eye, nose, throat, and skin irritations, and even reduce fertility. Low levels of perchloroethylene can be present in your indoor air, as any perchloroethylene that was not removed in the dry cleaning process will be in your clothes that you bring into your home. Once again, this leaves the clothes and goes into the air. Chemical manufacturers in the dry cleaning industry claim that the tiny amounts of PERC you may absorb through your lungs or skin from contact with dry cleaned clothes represent a negligible threat to human health and little danger to the environment. These claims weren't reassuring to regulators and health authorities in California, where the use of PERC was banned in 3,400 dry cleaning businesses by the end of 2010. And I do have to comment that California is often very overzealous in banning things. We all know they label almost everything as toxic, but honestly, they might be correct. We kind of make fun of it that they are overzealous, but erring on the side of caution, I don't think is the worst stance to take. And you do have other options, especially now, even since this book was written. There are a lot of healthier options for detergents and stuff. Here they're recommending soap nuts, which are a type of dried berry that, like regular detergents, interact with water to produce cleansing actions on fabric. Sold at health food stores, these dried fruits come from a tree native to Asia. The website buysoapnuts.com also sells this easy-to-use product at affordable prices. The nuts can be used 2 or 3 times each and are 100% biodegradable. Soap nuts. And here they talk about another product which I'm interested in trying. Someone sent me this link a while ago and I just kind of ignored it. I left it in my saved pages to one day return to. It can be found at lifenatural.com, which are magnets that go into the washing machine along with your load of laundry to help remove grime from garments again and again, since the magnets never need to be replaced. I am still keen to try that. I've been putting it off too long. Finally, you can create your own laundry detergent at home with a few simple and inexpensive ingredients. Take 2 cups of grated gentle soap, such as Dr. Bronner's, they recommend here, and mix it well with 1 cup of washing soda and 1 cup of borax. Add 1/4 cup of this mixture to each load of laundry. Splash in a cup of white vinegar during the rinse cycle to brighten the appearance of the clothes. Yeah, cool. And they talk about here in their closing chapters why natural fabrics are safer. They talk a little bit about linen, as we did earlier, and some other ones. But what we talked about earlier with the linen and wool, I mentioned that not every fabric has been studied and how they interact with each other and stuff. So I'm just going to kind of ignore this section here. You can read the book if you're interested, because I am very interested on how the electrical fields interact with each other. I know most of this book was about chemicals, but that is the other major thing that people are interested in is the electricity. So I don't want to recommend fabrics that they're recommending if, like silk, they have an electrical potential of 10 or something like that. We want to stay away from those. And the final page that I saved here was more recommendations about safe detergents. They're recommending the company here, 7th Generation, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, especially in America. It's a very popular brand now, 7th Generation, because their detergent is vegetable-based and not oil-based. That's why they're using it. Tips here, they say if you buy a detergent, it should say no fragrance on the container. Even if the product says unscented, it may still have a fragrance inside. There are a few products, such as Granny's unscented detergent, which can be trusted, but you must do your homework to decipher which products are truly fragrance-free. If you want a safe fragrance in your wash and on your clothes, consider adding an essential oil. Use dryer balls instead of chemical fabric softeners. Dryer balls soften fabrics, eliminate static, and shorten drying time by up to 25%. And another eco-friendly alternative to chemical fabric softeners is to add a cup of ordinary household baking soda to the rinse cycle. To further diminish the environmental impact of cleaning your clothes, and to save money, I would say, dry your laundry outside on a line instead of in a clothes dryer. To bleach clothes, try adding hydrogen peroxide to the wash. Another option is to soak the clothes overnight in 8 parts of cold water to every 1 part of hydrogen peroxide, and then wash the clothes. And they recommended a book here, Betty's Book of Laundry Secrets by Betty Faust and Maria Rodale. And that was the last point that I saved here. There was a lot in this book. Pretty good book. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sure there is more to say about health consequences of textiles, but I think that's enough for today. Before I go, just want to remind you that you can find everything that I do on my website, notusbooks.org, including all the books that I've written and helped publish, all of my social media links and everything, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube channels. Everything is in the description and on my website, notusbooks.org. And you can find an archive of this podcast there. You could download the episodes there for free, and you should know about that in case this podcast gets taken down again, which is a possibility. And if you didn't know, if you're an audio listener, we do post these, most of them now also to YouTube and Rumble. Again, links in the description. And if you want to support this podcast, you can do so through Patreon for as little as $1.99 a month. You get all of the podcast episodes there at least 1 week early. We also do a Zoom meeting. The other supplement distributors and myself, we do a Zoom meeting once a week where we go pretty deep into specific diseases and products, and we always do at least one case study each week. I think they're highly valuable, and you can see them all there on the Patreon. It's also a little bit of extra content there, like some videos that have been taken down from YouTube. And if you just want to support us, I appreciate it. Patreon link is in the description as well. If you want our health advice, you can reach out to any of our coaches, which is on the contact page of my other website, wallexwarriors.ca. That's in the description as well. Don't worry about the spelling. There's a questionnaire on that page, which you can fill out and email to any of the coaches. They will respond with a protocol, including a supplement recommendation to start. It's usually a digestion protocol to start for almost everyone. They'll also give you our food advice and anything else that's specific to your case. And of course, we are committed to continuing to help you through your health journey. We normally don't talk at all about people's clothing, by the way. This is not part of our normal protocol. This is some deep level stuff here that we do not get a chance to touch on. If we told the average customer about this stuff before they got started, they would probably never get started. It's pretty intimidating here. So I got to take supplements. I got to change the way that I eat. I got to throw out processed foods. I got to stop pharmaceutical drugs, which is always your choice, by the way. We're not allowed to tell you about pharmaceutical drugs. But then they're thinking, oh, I got to throw out my wardrobe and buy new clothes. And oh my goodness, this is too much. I guess I'll just stick with my diabetes. We don't want you to think about that. Take the basic steps to improve your health. For the most part, the vast majority of health problems can be completely reversed without paying attention to your clothes, by the way. But I hope that by implementing some of these strategies that we talked about today, by being aware of them at least, that we can improve our health even further. It's fantastic to me if you no longer have diabetes, but I want all of us to thrive and optimize, especially as this world becomes more toxic in some ways. It's getting better in some other ways. We have more food choices now, we have more supplement choices now, we have more information about all this stuff available now, but EMF continues to get cranked up. That's why it was very interesting to me that the linen and the wool were said to be protective against EMF. That's awesome. And certain chemical exposures are increasing, even though chemical exposure was bad in the past as well. Just saying, in this continually toxic world that we live in here, we need to protect ourselves from all angles, including our basic message, which is nutrients and foods and drugs, but also deeper level stuff like this. So I do hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you for being here with me, especially all the way to the end. Pat yourself on the back here. You can let me know anything you'd like me to cover on the podcast. You can reach out to me on any of the platforms. I'm always open to ideas. All of this is for you. So let me know, hit me up, give me your feedback. And other than that, stay healthy, my friends. Until next time.